This quilt block is called Basket of Chips. So it's part of a series that I'm doing where I'm doing 5 different styles of basket quilt blocks. So this is the second of the 5. I will have a printable for this. You can make it in 3 different sizes. So this size is the 10-inch size that we're going to be making today. But if you'd like a smaller 5-inch or a larger 15-inch size, go ahead and grab that printable. It is also part of this quilt pattern that will have all 5 different sizes. So if you'd like to make the quilts, then you go ahead and grab that pattern instead of the individual patterns, and it will have all 5 of the basket quilts in there. Okay, so for the 10-inch size quilt block, we are going to need 2 squares of fabric. These are going to be 6 inches square. So I have a blue here and I have the background color. These are going to be making our half square triangles. We're going to be making 3 different methods here. So this one will be for the 8 at a time method. We will also need 4 squares of fabric. This is going to have a blue, a flower print, and an orange, and the background. And these are 4 1/8. And these are going to be used to make our 4 at a time half square triangles. Then we'll need some flower and background fabric. These are, let's see, 3 inches. They'll be making our 2 at a time half square triangles. And then for our squares, we're going to need 3 squares of the flower fabric. These are 2.5, as well as a background square that's 2.5. And then for our rectangles, we're going to need two rectangles that are 2.5 by 6.5. So let's just get started. Like I said, we're going to be making all 3 different methods of making half square triangles because we need a lot of them. So let's just get started with our 8 at a time method. If you've watched, I've done this before. Where's my ruler? Here we go. I like to draw the lines that I'm sewing on. So I take my ruler, line it up with the 1/4 of an inch marking from corner to corner, and draw a line along the edge of the ruler. This gives me my stitching line. So for my half square triangle 8 at a time method, I will do this on both sides, or both diagonals. And then okay, and while we are drawing our lines, I'm going to take my 2 at a time pieces. These are the small 3-inch squares. And I'm just going to do the same thing, but I'm not going to go both directions. I'm just going to go one direction. Oh, now we have all of our pieces ready to sew. So let's just go to the sewing machine. I'm going to be doing the 8 at a time method first. So I'll take these 2 large squares and I will just stitch along all of the lines that I just drew. Okay, so I've stitched along the lines, and now it's time to cut the half square triangles. So I'm just taking my ruler here. I'm going to cut it in half vertically and horizontally. And then I will cut between the stitching in both directions as well. Okay, so now we have our 8 half square triangles that are the blue and white. Next, let's do our 2 at a time half square triangles. So I'm just going to take these. We already drew the line. I'm just going to take this to the sewing machine and stitch along those 2 lines with these 2 fabrics right side together. Okay, and then I will just take my ruler and we will just cut this right between the stitching lines. And then we will have our 2 at a time method done. Okay, so now it's time to do our 4 at a time method, and we're going to be doing 2 sets of those. The first set is going to be the same as our 2 at a time method. So we're going to have the same colors. So the flower with the background color. So that will be 1. And then the remaining 2 squares we will match together. Those will be for our other set of half square triangles. So for the 4 at a time method, you line them, your 2 pieces of fabric right sides together. Then you're going to stitch all the way around the square with 1/4 inch seam allowance. Okay, so we've stitched around all the sides of these squares here. The next thing we're going to do is we're just going to take our ruler. We're going to cut them from corner to corner in both directions. And this will give us 4 half square triangles. Now, this method does create a square that is on the bias, so you will want to be careful when you're pressing and when you're sewing them together that you don't pull and stretch them, because they will get out of shape more easily. Some people don't like this method because of that, but sometimes when you just need 4. Okay, so next we need to trim up these half square triangles, and we need to get them, these are all made just a little bit oversized so that we can trim them up to be exact. So that the size they need to be is 2.5 inches. So I'm just using my half square triangle square up ruler here, and I'm lining up the 2.5 inch marking here on the ruler with the seam, and then I just trim the outside edges, and that will just create the perfect size triangle. So we'll just go ahead and do that with all of these pieces. Okay, so the next step is to press these open. So I'm going to press all of the ones that are white and with the flower print towards the flower, and then all of the ones that have any blue on them, I'm going to press towards the blue. Okay, and then the last step for these half square triangles is just to trim the tails. So I just do that with a pair of scissors. Quick and easy little snip. Okay, so now it's time to lay out our block. So we're just going to take our squares, the white and blue. I'm going to lay 4 across the top here, and then 3 down the side. Well, 4 if you count that top row here. Then we'll have a spare. We won't use that one. Then we're going to take 3 more of our squares that have the blue and the orange, and we're going to place them right here, right here. We'll have 1 extra of those. We'll set that aside for another use. And then we'll have our half square triangles that are the flower with the white, and we want the white pointing upwards and to the left. Then we will have our 3 squares with the just the solid squares. We'll place them right there. I'm running out of room here. Move the camera a little bit so you can see the bottom here. So then we're going to place our white square here in the corner, and then we'll have our 2 half square triangles for our little base. We'll have a spare of that color as well, and then our 2 rectangles we will go place on both sides here, on the bottom and then on the side. So I'm just going to take these over to the sewing machine. I'm going to stitch these by row. So I'm going to take this top row, not the rectangle yet, but these top 4 pieces, and stitch them all together. And then each row I'm going to stitch all together at this point. The bottom row with this rectangle and square, a half square triangle, I'll stitch that as well at this point. Okay, so I've got all the rows sewn together. So I'm going to take my pressing mat here and I'm going to press them flat. Now every row I'm going to press in opposite directions. So the top row I'll press in one direction. The second row I will press in the opposite direction. And then continue on that way. But the reason, when we put them right sides together, we'll be able to nest our seams. So that's the reason for that. So just gotta remember which way I've done each one and continue on each row. Okay, so then I'm going to take this side piece and we're going to sew these pieces together. So I'll take the rectangle, right sides together, add the half square triangle, and then I'll add the square. Okay, so we've got that piece sewn. I'm going to next grab each row and sew it to the next for these 4 rows right here, 5 rows. Okay, so we have all of our rows sewn together. I'm just going to take it and press all the seams in one direction here. And we'll take our last piece here and place it right sides together and stitch along the side. Okay, and lastly, we will just take our iron and give this a nice press and just make sure it's flat. And so that is how you make the basket of chips quilt block. So it's easy to make. There's a lot of half square triangles, a lot of assembly, but it's not very hard. So go ahead and grab that printable if you'd like to make it in different sizes, or if you'd like to make the quilt. This is what it's going to look like. We'll have this with 4 other basket style blocks in the quilt pattern. So go ahead and grab those if you're interested, and thanks for watching.